So if you want to go ahead and go to the next slide, Doug, that would be great. Okay, so like I said, I just want to do some sharing today on some things. Clearly, 3-4 weeks ago, we could have never predicted where we are today. Really unprecedented. And that's been hard. I mean, I know last week I was really feeling it, and I've talked to some other principals too, even what Keith said earlier about missing the kids, just that sudden abrupt change in what we had planned really has created a lot, I think, anxiety and just uncertainty. And so we need to be mindful of that and keep that in mind when we're working with our staff and with our students also. But this is a learning experience. I think we can look at it like, you know, we just got to get through this. But I also think that it's important to look at what we can get from this as well. So I really want to kind of talk about today some things that we're trying to do and also some things maybe that we can learn from it as well. So here's a few things that I've learned so far. And it's just really how unpredictable the future is, right? We just can't know exactly what is in store, but we can always be trying to prepare for really for anything, be prepared for the unpredictable possibilities that happen. So that's something that I've thought about. The ones who have continued to grow and learn, educators who've done that seem better positioned now, like with technology, for instance. If they've learned technology, they're in a better position to be able to deal with this, really maybe than those in our buildings who have not. So always just trying to prepare. We know that technology is going to be a big part of the future. Another thing I've learned is that kids who don't have that ability at home, who don't have internet, they are really at a big disadvantage right now. And we're trying to do some things to overcome that, and I'll share a few of those today as well. I'm reminded about what we have to be grateful for. You know, the things we take for granted all of a sudden now, going to a ball game, going out to eat, going to the movies. Those are things that maybe we took for granted, but I know that once this is over, I'm going to be a little extra thankful for those opportunities that happen. I was thankful that Missouri, of course, Commissioner Mandevan came out and canceled standardized testing. And one thing I learned in that was that it's really not essential to learning. I think I knew that already, but it's a reminder that there are things that are more important than standardized testing, and those are the things that we're trying to get done right now. And from what I'm seeing, most educators are really going above and beyond to get those things done. Learning is more than just the academic content that we have to teach. So today, when we're talking about overcoming challenges to remote learning, I think we're talking about anything that has to do with the work we do with kids, because it's all related to learning, right? The connections, the relationships, all that matters to learning. It's not just the academic content. So like remote learning is not just getting content to kids. It's doing the things that we do with school to make that happen. So let's go on to the next slide, Doug. So again, I'm a technology enthusiast, and something that I promote, and we're seeing this right now, that folks that have technology abilities are able to leverage their skills. And the ones who don't, they're really trying to upskill as fast as they can. But if you don't keep up, if you're not trying to keep up, what we're finding is it's harder for them, right? It's harder for them to be able to upskill than it is for others. And technology is one powerful way that we can connect with people when we aren't in the same physical space. So I think one thing we're going to take away from this experience that we're going to learn going through this is that people who maybe have been a little more reluctant to embrace technology are going to see that it's not optional for today, but that it's something that, you know, because of our world changing, it's only going to become more valuable over time to have those skills. So it's really not an optional for us either as leaders to be, we have to be the digital leaders in our building. It doesn't mean you have to be a technology expert, but it does mean that you have to be a technology learner. So sharing the things that you're learning with your staff, I think, is important in that. So that's one of the things we've been really trying to do, is just this whole idea of sharing learning. Our band director did a great video for his band, which is, you know, close to 100 kids. And he was just sharing with them different things that he's learned since he's been at home, how he's using his time at home to learn. And it was really, it wasn't an assignment. It wasn't a, you've got to do this, but it was supporting and encouraging and modeling learning for his students. So I think as we think about remote learning again, we have to reframe. Maybe it's not just rolling out assignments. It's also how can we model and share the things that we're learning with our students. So let's go ahead and go on to the next slide, Doug. We're going to stop occasionally here and give you a chance, folks, to kind of answer any questions that, or ask any questions that you might have. Or to make any kind of comments that you might have as well. So I just want to kind of share some celebrations of some things we've seen just in our district that have been really exciting, of people that are kind of stepping up and doing cool things. We've been delivering meals. I know many of you have been doing the same things. We actually have our buses just run the bus routes, and those meals, the kids come out to the bus stops, and then the meals are delivered from there. And you can see that those are pretty incredible numbers. This is from last week. And that's just been a huge thing in our community to make sure that our kids, who many of them are economically disadvantaged, still have something to eat every day. And I'm just grateful to all the folks that have been part of making that happen. Hey, Doug. This was a photo. We're doing kind of a spirit week this week in our district. It's district-wide. All the buildings are doing it. And this was a photo from some younger students of just what they're reading. Tuesday was Share What You're Reading Day, and they do that under the hashtag. And I thought that was just cute that the kids are sharing that. So every day this week, we have a different theme that we're all following. Next, Doug. And then in our building, we did a flip grid with some of our students and asked them to give a shout out on Monday to someone that they missed at school, maybe a teacher or student, or anybody really in the building that they just missed seeing, because that's just, we all miss each other, right? I mean, there's kind of a grieving process almost to, we were expecting this to be a certain way, and now it's different. You know, students, you'd think they'd be like, oh yeah, school's out, this is great. But what we're seeing is that a lot of our kids are really feeling that, like that's heavy. There's some grief in that, like they're not getting to see their friends. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. This wasn't how it worked. So having that empathy and understanding that and giving them an outlet for that is something that we tried to do. So these messages were really cool as students kind of reached out and shared some things. Okay, Doug, next one. I've been doing daily announcements and sharing those on Facebook and Twitter. Just tell my joke of the day every day. They're just kind of goofy, but that was one way to keep a little bit of normalcy because I typically do that. And I've tried to like share helpful information in those videos too about how to access different things and what our plans are just to get the information out into our community. Okay, Doug, next slide. I saw this on social media, on Twitter, I think, and I get so much benefit, so much value added from my learning network there, my PLN, and just thankful for, you know, the value that that does add. But these questions I thought were great. If kids did these things, if any of us did these things every day during this school closure time, we would see continued growth and just development of ourselves. It would be good for us. It's healthy, right? It's good for us. So these questions were great. Just being grateful, getting outside, checking in on people, lifting up others, you know, making sure that we're being physically active. Great advice here. I thought that I saw on Twitter. Okay, Doug, next slide. Keep in mind that your students hopefully are spending some time learning. This was a painting that my daughter did. And again, it doesn't have to be an assignment, right? They can still be learning based on their passions, the things that they're interested in. And I think if we can help encourage that and just nurture that and shine a spotlight on that, that's one way that we can continue to lead in this without just keeping school just like it was. So instead of giving students just something to do, here's a way that they can, take some of their passions and develop those. So she did this painting last week, actually, and was really proud of it. Dad moment, right? I had to share it with you guys. But it was just one example of something that she's done, and she's had several little projects that she's been doing that are good, that are not necessarily related to academic content, but they are great learning experiences and just great things for kids, great things to do. Okay, Doug. Something I always try to share whenever I have an opportunity to speak with a group of educators is just where I think school has kind of gotten in the last, well, as long as I've been in education. I think the trend has been that academics have become a bigger and bigger part of our focus. And then some of the other things like leadership and interpersonal skills and things like curiosity and creativity and adaptability, those things have become, they've kind of gotten pushed to the side. We're seeing a renewed focus and a renewed emphasis on social and emotional learning. And I think that's important, and we want to keep that in mind now, probably even more important now than when we were having school in physical space. Okay, Doug, if you want to go on to the next slide. So this is what I would like to see it look like, more of a balanced perspective, and keeping in mind that, learning is for life. It's not just for that next grade level or the next class or for college or career. We're helping kids prepare for whatever they might face, the unpredictable, just like what we're going through right now. We could not have predicted where we're at, but how can we help them to have those skills of resilience and adaptability and being able to just handle things and be problem solvers, really. Okay, Doug, next slide. So I want to also get into just some nuts and bolts of some things that we're thinking about right now in our school. And I've been really constantly communicating with our staff about keeping the expectations reasonable. And keeping the expectations reasonable for themselves too. There are a lot of challenges in homes right now that we have to remember. And so I just jotted down a few things that students are probably dealing with right now and things that staff members are probably dealing with right now that are making it, difficult to be able to just be well in that. And so being able to show that that heart for other people and what they might be going through is so important for all of us. We've got staff members that have young kids at home and they're trying to teach their kids and also teach their school kids. We've got students that have all kinds of responsibilities. Many of them are taking extra hours up to help pay the bills because mom or dad got laid off. So we have set a boundary on, because with our remote learning, we do have one-to-one for our students with Chromebooks. And so everybody has a device at home, but not everybody has internet. But we're still able to, we facilitate learning through Canvas, our learning management system. And staff members could be tempted to just kind of run class like they have and just push forward. But we've asked them to limit the assignments, the workload from their classes to 1 hour per week for regular classes. And we're doing 2 hours per week for dual credit classes or classes where students are dually enrolled and they're going to get college credit for those. So I think that's just so important when we're talking about learning, is to remember to that personal aspect and the teaching with empathy, the leading with empathy is so important. Okay, Doug, let's go on to the next slide. So I've tried to encourage staff because of the anxiety that they're feeling, the stress they're feeling, and help reassure them in this, that they're doing okay. And that's one part of my leadership, is to remind them of that. And so these are some things that I think are important to communicate to your staff. You know, do the best you can. Just try to keep growing, learning, and changing through this. Be generous with yourself. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Take care of you. And just that acknowledgement that you're doing great. So keep it up. I think that's really important right now. Okay, Doug. So as we think about how we're going to approach remote learning, I think that we're not doing it wrong. We can't go wrong as long as we're doing some of these things. Probably the most important one is that we're making the relationships the top priority, and that we're trying to meet needs of students and staff as much as possible. I think those things are so important. I have heard of schools that have just shut it down, you know, they're not doing anything. And I'm not here to really judge that. I just have a hard time understanding why we wouldn't continue to do something to add value to our students and our families. So I feel like we should be doing something, like we should have a bias towards action. You bring me a problem in my school culture with our teachers, we're going to want to do something to try to make things better. So we have taken action. We are trying to do things, but we're also wanting to make sure that we don't become a bigger problem because of how we do that we are actually meeting the legitimate needs of students and staff and not putting too much on them. So these are just a few things that I think are important for us to remember, because we can really push, and I've heard of districts that are having lots of expectations of teachers too, where you've got to log so much time and you've got to, you know, it's more stringent, and I just don't feel like we want to also put too much on our teachers either, because the things they're dealing with can be significant. And one thing I didn't even mention on the slide before is, I mean, what about the fear of just getting sick, or a loved one getting sick with COVID-19? I mean, that's something that everybody's got to be aware of, I think, also right now. So we did have a question of over here on the discussion of how do you promote a growth mindset during distance learning? That's a great question. Feel free to respond also to each other on that. That's a great way to have a chat kind of in the background. But I think, you know, some of the things that we're talking about giving kids some challenges maybe to do rather than traditional academic content, that could be a great way to think about that. Okay, let's go on to the next slide, Doug. Again, relationships are so important. I often tell the story of Blake anytime I have a chance to share. He's a junior at Bolivar High School who, ever since he's come in to our building, he has greeted students at the front doors every single morning. And so he's a rock star in our school. He's had a huge impact on our culture. The kids love him. They value the fact that he's there with smiles every morning and greeting them. And how do we take that and do this now remotely? You know, there's no way to really get that level of human interaction, but we can remember that the interactions that we have with our students, either by picking up the phone or by sending a message of encouragement, or even the types of assignments that we give, all those things are opportunities to build relationships, which is important. I love this comment that a mantra right now for Winnetonka has become patience and grace. So important. That's fantastic. Okay, Doug, if you want to go on to the next slide. So here's kind of our, I love that mantra of patience and grace, but here's kind of our priorities. And again, I've communicated this over and over with our staff, because I feel like, whatever the right amount of communication is, when you can't see people face to face and have, those conversations like you would in the building, you need to probably triple the amount of communication that you have. And just anytime that I am communicating, I'm reminding them of these three things, which is number one, that connection. That's our number one priority, is connection. Relationships, lead with your heart in this. Have that grace, have that patience. And then the second one is engagement. And that's kind of that growth mindset piece that someone commented about. It's inspiring learning. Share what you're learning with your students. Share with them and let them know what are some things that are part of your daily routine. How do you build in learning? What are you reading? What have you learned today? That doesn't have to be an assignment, but you're still creating some engagement around learning. And then the third and last priority is content. If we can do something to enhance or extend and enrich content during this time without adding stress or burdens to families, I'm all for it. So that's kind of what we've done with our three priorities. So kind of curious how that resonates. Does that sound right to you all? I mean, as far as what you're trying to do, or anybody got anything to extend on that? Feel free to jump in there with some comments, because I am watching those, and we'll kind of shout those out and give some feedback. Doug, I think we're ready for the next slide. So engagement for us kind of looks like this. Rather than maybe a packet or a worksheet where students are just looking up answers or filling those out, how can we give them some questions? Instead of just having them here complete this assignment, what can we ask them to create? Is there something that can tie in with home that they can create? And then discussion, I think, is a great way to do that as well, because you're building relationships. They're not just delivering to you whatever that next assignment is to check it off the list, but they're actually having those discussions that can build that sense of community also. So some of our teachers are using Zoom. We also use Canvas because it has a feature in it where we can do conferencing, which is great. And just on Zoom for our district, we're not allowing the video to be used for students just because of privacy issues and things like that. But we are trying to still have some engagement in terms of, at least being able to talk to kids, talk to each other, have discussions, and things like that. Okay, Doug, next slide. Now, one big topic that I've heard about from a lot of administrators is, what are we going to do about grades? How do we ensure equity? Some kids in our district, and I'm sure same for you, don't have internet access. Some don't have, it's on a level playing field even in the home, and what the expectations are, the stability, the stressors that they might be under right now, how much they're having to work to support maybe their family. So grades are a concern. But then on the other hand, you've got teachers that are saying, hey, if I don't give grades, then our student's going to do any of this work. Why would they do it if they're not going to get a grade? And unfortunately, I think we have trained students by the time they get to, especially to high school, probably to middle school too, that, part of learning is grades. Like, if you're going to do, they want to know, well, like, how many points is this worth? Will we get a grade on this? Will this question be on the test? All these things that are obviously not learning questions, but they are questions that our kids have come to learn to ask because the system has kind of trained them to do that, right? So we are, for our school, we are not going to give grades in the sense that it can't hurt them. Like, whatever their grade was when we left at the end of third quarter, that is the floor for them. Okay, their grade can come up, but it cannot go down. And so I'm encouraging feedback, or teachers to give feedback on work, And they can let them know, you got these were things that you did correctly. Here's some things maybe that could be done better. But we're going to find out what it's like and how students do when they don't have the grades as kind of a carrot. I really wish we could work on some systemic change and I know a lot of schools are doing that, but just to help them to not view learning as that has to have the grade attached to it. So credit, same thing. Of course, they'll get credit for the classes that they're in. Of course, in high school, that's a big issue, and that's going to work towards graduation. We did have some students who were not passing classes when we left at the end of third quarter, and so those are like our highest priority kids. Like, how can we help them to do the work that they need to do to get their academics in order so that they can graduate this won't impact that part of things. So that's important. And that was a question that was just asked. How do you account for seniors who are failing a class right now for graduation? So we're going to try to reach out to them and help them to get on track, to get the work done that they need to do. Our goal will be that no one is going to not graduate, but certainly we're going to need them to work with us, and at least, I think that needs to be, again, patience and grace to be able to realize what they are capable of doing right now. But we're definitely going to have to work with them to help make that happen. The last thing there, I'm not sure where I heard this, but I love this quote: "Are you a learner or a grade earner?" Someone said that, and I think it's just so important. Like, I really want to help our students be reframed to think of themselves like it's learning, not just being a grade earner in that. Okay, Doug, next next slide. For kids without internet, here's what we're doing with that. Get some good comments about grades there too. I think in our district, we're at about 10%. That's actually better than I expected it to be. We asked them to let us know. We kind of got feedback on through text. We blasted text messages out and said, hey, respond, call the school office, let us know if you don't have internet so that we can provide remote learning. We're still working on getting a count of everybody and where they're at on that. Do they have internet? Do they not? Who's responding? Who's not? But what we're doing for kids without internet, we had originally thought we were going to just like do paper copies and then send those home. We were either going to send them on the bus routes with the food, or we were going to mail them. We kind of decided, well, mailing it might be easier. We'll incur some postage, but high school kids aren't always going to come out to the bus and get their work, right? So mailing it, just make sure it gets there. And we asked teachers, though, we came up with a different idea. One of our teachers in our building suggested, hey, what about flash drives? Every kid has a Chromebook, so why not load some videos and make it more personal? We can put some things in there that they can then just push those in or put those right into their Chromebooks and pull up the material off of there. And so we're actually preparing flash drives to mail out. We're going to mail them. We're going to put a self-addressed stamped envelope in there for them to be able to mail them back. We're going to disinfect them when they come back in so that we're being safe on that. But that's one way we're going to try to get some work, add some value to their education for kids who don't have internet. So that's just an idea that we had. I'm really more aware now than ever before just how big a deal it is for kids that don't have internet, though. It is it's really puts them at a disadvantage. I knew that before, but now I really know that. But even when we're in school every day, if you don't have internet in the home, there's just so many. It's almost like not having books in your home, And if you don't have those materials that could be for learning, then you're underserved, right? So I think our district has already decided that going forward beyond the school closures, we're really going to work to provide internet, like the Jeeps or something like that, that available to folks who are low income or don't have internet in their houses at home. Is anybody else doing that? Anybody provide internet that way? Looks like somebody was asking about, I know in a lot of the urban areas that some of the broadband providers are doing deals for folks that are low income. In our community, we reached out to all of our internet service providers, and then we publicized what they're doing right now. Some of them are doing free installations. They're doing a period of time for free, some things like that. Somebody here's Jeff saying they purchased hotspots for their students. We looked at that also, but we didn't feel like we could get them in place in time really before this school year was out. So I think we're just looking more at the long term on that. That's great. Yeah, this is a local provider that hooked up internet for all students without internet. That is awesome. Thanks, Corey, for sharing that. That's just a celebration. It's exciting. Looks like some other places having some resources there as well. What we found was some of the kids that said they didn't have internet in the home, they're still participating online. I guess we also did a thing where we moved around some of our Wi-Fi hotspots in our building. So we basically boosted the signal, kind of like what here Joplin's saying. Yeah, so that you can sit in our parking lot and actually get online and use that without having to get out of your car. So that was another thing that we did that we feel like was a good way to offer that. Doug, we're way back here at the beginning. Can you move us through there? Sherwood, same thing, Wi-Fi in the parking lot. That's great. And some churches have done the same thing. That's cool too. I think the hotspot industry has seen a lot of new business over the past few weeks, the Khajiits and those kinds of things. Okay, another issue that we've been trying to work through is special education and how we can support those students. So those case managers and some of our para-educators that work with those students, typically they've really been working hard to reach out and make personal contact with them. I know that some of the legalities of that are concerns that we have. I know some of that's been relaxed just a little bit. It's kind of like do the best you can. But as I understand it, IEP timelines and some of those things are going to stay consistent. So that process is going to have to go on either by phone or some other way of holding those meetings and that type of thing. But definitely we're working on that and trying to implement IEPs as best we can. You know, you can still do extended time. You can still do some of the accommodations, even if you're doing things that are more in an online environment. What other ideas does this group have, or what are you doing for special education? Does anybody have any suggestions with that? I can't see if you're raising your hands or not. Or
Carrie Broyles from Liberty, Missouri.
Yeah,
Our teachers are doing IEPs on Zoom with parents, and our process coordinator is sitting in on those just to make sure we're covering everything. In the Zoom link, they're actually posting the IEP document so that everyone can see that as well. So that's just one way we're doing that.
That's awesome. Thank you. I believe those can be done by phone too, like a conference call if they didn't have video. So that might be another possibility.
We've been told too at Mexico that getting the entire IEP team together on a conference call is not necessary, that as long as we're conferencing with the teachers like via email, and then we get in contact with the parent, we can kind of bring everybody together, just maybe not all at the same time.
That makes sense. Awesome, thank you. That is a good way to do that, because it would be maybe difficult to get everybody together, but you can collect that feedback and then go ahead and have that IEP meeting. I like this one. A lot of kids have things read to them, and so the teachers can record those readings and then send those out. One thing about that, we've encouraged like our teachers to use video, even if you're uncomfortable, because it is so much more personal. And it, I think, is what we're all searching for right now, is like connection, you know, because we're so isolated. And so that a lot of our teachers have been doing videos to send out, or they've used Flipgrid or even Zoom. Even though the student side's off, the teacher can still interact. I like this virtual parent coffee meeting. So that essential skills students, parents can talk and share ideas. That's a great idea as well. One thing, I got an idea from my network too, is, you know, normally as principal, you can just walk around the building and kind of see how things are going. You can talk to the kids, you can talk to the teachers, you can visit classrooms, but now all of a sudden it's like, how do I keep track of like what's going on and how students and parents even are experiencing this, like from their side, what we're trying to do. With our education during the school closures. So we are putting together a like an advisory team of students, like a group of students with representation from each of our grade levels. And we're going to try to check in with them each week and do like a Zoom, probably audio call, or we might do it through like the discussion board feature on Canvas. But to get like dialogue and interaction with them about how they are doing with the remote learning, you know, what they're kind of experiencing in that, to hear their voice, kind of bring out that student voice. So that someone had shared that idea with me, and I thought that was great. And so that's one way we're really going to try to engage our students in that. So, you know, the last thing, I think this kind of goes back to that, the slide about academic training, or how academics have become such a focus for schools over the years, and maybe some of the soft skills, the leadership, the interpersonal, the creativity, the curiosity maybe has gotten pushed to the side a little bit. And we're seeing this now more than ever. You know, school is not just being good at school. We're not even there now. We're not even at school. But we're wanting to help students. We're wanting to add value to them. We're wanting to help them do well in their lives before school. We're wanting to, you know, model for them what it means to reach for your potential, to aim for excellence. That's one of our core values, and we always try to teach that, and that we're trying to crush apathy here and not be content with the status quo and not be content with how things are, but to always try to grow, learn, and change. And so if we can have that message come through, kind of those core values of our school, then I think that is really, that's how we're going to measure our success. How can we take our core values, what's most important to us in our school, and try to continue that work as best we can going forward, because we want our kids to do well and be successful. So that's pretty much what I had to share for today. Thank you all for being here. Oh, I like this comment from Valerie too, doing some parent and student surveys about their experience with e-learning. That's a great idea. We did a survey to our students about just their wellness, like, hey, how are you doing? And we had like 150 kids respond to that, and it was good just to hear kind of how they were you know, dealing with the at-home life and knowing that their school year had come to a close. So, anything else for the good of the order here? Any other comments or thoughts? Here's a good question. Did schools send letters to parents explaining how we're doing grades? We have not done that yet. we've kind of just held off on that at this point. What are thoughts on that question? Because I can see how, that could be a little bit tricky to communicate. That's something to definitely consider, is what are we going to do on the way that we communicate that. Well, again, thanks everybody. Hang in there. Just want to give some encouragement to you. Thank you for what you're doing for kids and for learning. It's been a stressful time for sure, but the way that I've seen educators support each other overall has been fantastic, and Missouri educators are doing a great job leading up and really just making sure that we're showing up strong in these difficult times. So really appreciate you all being here today. If there's ever anything I can do to add value to you on that slideshow, by the way, I did do a resources document, and it was the last slide. I forgot about that one, but it had a link where I've just collected really everything that I've been gathering in my Twitter feed from other sources. There we go. Doug's gonna be able to get it up real quick. So I think there's one more slide there. Yeah, so here's the bit.ly on that. If you want to take a picture of that or whatever, you can check that out. And I added a lot of resources to that might be helpful during this time of school closures. So be sure and check that out. And if I can ever help with anything, let me know. I'm at David Geurin on Twitter, davidgeurin.com just on the webpage, and reach out, give me a shout. And thanks again for being here today and for all you're doing. Doug, I'll toss it back to you.